Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Seeland, which is a board game dating all the way back to 2010. This one accommodates 2 to 4 players and takes 45 to 60 minutes to play. And the designers of this game are Günter Burkhardt and the legendary Wolfgang Kramer. Before I get into my thoughts on Seeland, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK, and if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so the main board for Seeland is going to look like this. We have this rather large map made up of all these individual hexes, and you can see that these blue tiles have been randomly distributed face down on these pre-allocated spaces. There's quite a lot of those, but we do not know what's on the reverse side. And we've set up for a 2-player game here, so therefore each player is going to have a starting windmill on one of these starting spots. And to the top left-hand side of the board, you have where most of the gameplay takes place through these rondelles and through this coin, kind of this cool coin mechanism that manages each player's money at any given time. So in this game, you have 2 different types of tiles. You have these windmills and you have these 3 different types of crops. And you can see that these all have unique numbers on them, or different types of numbers ranging from 0 all the way up to 7, I believe. You have the 2 stacks of tiles here. We've got the windmill stacks and we have the crop stacks. And this is going to be one of the counters, or one of the end game triggers once one of these stacks have been depleted. And of course, when that happens, the player with the most victory points, when that happens, is going to be the victor. There's going to be a few additional resources such as these governors, which may come into play when some of these tiles are revealed. Each player is going to have an additional 3 windmills which they can put on the board, so you have a maximum of 4. You've got some of these coins and you have some of these point markers. So how does the game actually work and what are we trying to achieve? So on any player's turn, they are going to move their player marker on which is going to be sat on one of these coins, and move it a number of spaces depending on the tile you wish to draft. And you're going to draft these tiles based on where this governor piece is here, or where this guildmaster is. And the first spot you go to is going to be free. The second one is going to cost 1. This is going to cost 2. This is going to cost 3, and so on. But let's just say, for an example, on my turn, I wanted to move 1, 2, 3 spaces like so, and pick up this windmill. Now again, because the first spot is free, this means it's going to cost me 2 coins. Now when I spend these coins, I'm going to move my player piece 2 spots on the coin track because I spent 2 coins. And then I'm going to take the tile that I've just drafted and I'm going to place it somewhere on the board. Now when you place a windmill, you have to place it next to what we call a developed spot. So at the start of the game, there's not very many developed spots. But as you can probably imagine, as you start pushing kind of these crop tiles down, that would then be a developed spot, which means you could then sneak a new windmill tile in there. But let's just say I wanted to put my windmill tile here, like so, and then I would voluntarily choose to put my windmill on it. Bearing in mind that I only ever have 4 of those to play with. So that would technically conclude the orange player's turn, but then it would go on to the wood player here. And let's just say he wanted to get on this tile here. Again, this one's going to be free. This is going to cost 1. This is going to cost 2. So therefore, they're going to move 2 spaces like so in order to take this tile here, which is quite a nice one. And then they're going to take that and again place it somewhere on the board. Now, when you take one of these crop tiles, you have to place it next to one of your windmills. So let's just say they placed it here like this. And because now there are 2 coins exposed to the back of this coin track, they're going to now move to the front of the row like so, meaning that we both now have 5 coins to play with again. And you can probably tell that if, say for example, this player had ended up spending 4 like this, then this player ended up spending 1, this will go to the front like this, and you can see in the future round that this player now only has 2 coins to play with, whereas this one has 1, 2, 3, 4 coins to play with. So how do we actually score points? So whenever you completely surround a windmill with any other tile, let's say for example this the wood player played this red tile here like so, thus completely surrounding this windmill, you're going to calculate your total value of points based on not only the windmill value you're on, but also all the other ones around it. So this is going to be 5, it's going to be 12, it's going to be 16, it's going to be 21 points. Now you're also going to get additional points if you have all 3 different types of crops. So this is going to be now 26 points because you get the bonus 5 points. Now, if you ever only have 1 type of crop, so let's say, for example, this one was surrounded only by this particular type, when it comes to scoring, like so, because there's only ever 1 type, you are not going to score any points whatsoever. So you want to have at least 2 different types of crops before you, before you decide to cash out, essentially. Now, once you've taken those points, of course, you're going to change your point tally to reflect how many points you've gotten, like so. Or in fact, it was this colour. And then you're going to remove the windmill that's just been completed and put it back into your personal reserve. So you've always got those 4 to play with, meaning that you want to have a kind of cash flow of, once you have in your reserve ready to deploy onto the board, as well as having some on the board gaining points as you go. Now, whenever you build a mill next to one of these blue tiles, so let's just say the wood player ended up building this tile here, sneaking it in here like so, and claiming it as their own by putting their windmill on it. And because they are touching one of these blue tiles, or more than one of these blue tiles, which might be the case, you're going to reveal them and flip them over. And these are going to have different things on the reverse side of them. So they could just have more crops on it, like so. Or they could have these little farms on them that look like this. Now, these farms aren't going to be worth any points whatsoever. However, they will grant the player who flipped it one of these coins. And these coins are useful because at the end of your turn, you can cash one in to get another turn back to back. However, you can only do that once per turn. Now, you can also see that some of these tiles are going to have this little governor logo on it that looks like this. And when you reveal one of these tiles, you're going to take a governor from the supply and you're going to move it to the windmill that's just been, that's just revealed it like so. Now, what this means is that in order for me to get some bonus points and potentially, not suffer negative points, I'm going to have a certain threshold of points when it comes to cashing out this windmill. Now, the value that I need to aim towards and at least match is this value here, which is the next in line on the coin track. And this is going to fluctuate as the game goes on. So as you can see here, if this player ended up spending 2 coins, this is no longer going to require a value of 28. It's going to require a value of 17. So you have some kind of time pressure there, and you can try and time it just right to make sure that you get the numbers just right. Now, if you successfully cash that out, again, by surrounding it, which would normally I'd have to do here, I would not only get the points based on the the points as standard, but I'd get a bonus 5 points by at least matching that number. And I'd also claim this governor as my own. And if I have the most governors at the end of the game, I'm going to get 10 points. Now, if I did not successfully match or exceed that value, then I'm going to lose 5 points and the governor is going to move to the closest windmill like so. Now, in addition to the standard round structure of paying for a tile, picking it up, placing it on the board and potentially scoring, you can actually optionally declare one of these high score markers. And each player can do this twice throughout the game, and that's the only 2 times you can do it. But let's just say I've just done it here. So as normal, I would calculate my windmill. Let's just say I've surrounded this one. So I'd add up the points, which is going to be 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 16 points. Bearing in mind that adjacent windmills aren't going to score, I have all 3 different types of crops, so it's going to take me up to 21 points. So as normal, I would add on my 21 points to the score, but now I have the option to declare one of these high point markers. And if, let's just say I'll do it just for example, bearing in mind I probably wouldn't do this because this isn't a particularly good time to do it. But what this means is that at the end of the game, if one of my high score markers is in the top 3 spots amongst all the players, then there's potentially going to be some endgame scoring here. So again, the person who scored the most in a single round is going to get 20 points, second most 15 points, third most 10 points. And that is essentially how the game plays. As I said earlier, you're going to keep on playing until one of those stacks is depleted, until somebody lands on a spot that's empty. And then you're going to tally up all the points you've got through the game, added with the top 3 spaces from the high point score markers and from the player who's had the most governors collected throughout the game. And the player with the most points will be the winner. Okay, so let's share some thoughts on Seeland. So you can probably tell there from the overview that this game is rather simple, just a simple tile placement game where you're trying to extract as many points as you can by efficiently placing these windmills. But there is some cool things kind of built on top of the foundation of a solid but simple framework. The first of which is this money system. I think this is a fantastic mechanism. I've never seen it before, and I'm completely baffled why this has not been used in any other game. So I love this idea that, you know, money is a finite thing. It's capped. You can only ever have so much, and that's all kind of tethered to the other players. So, you know, at a maximum, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 coins to spend, but potentially you can be forced to always take the next tile in row if you have no money to spend, if somebody's just camping at the back spot here. And this has really played out in the games I've played with this one. And I think it's a really interesting element of interaction where, you know, if you're quite happy with the next tile on the rondelle, like let's just say the, you know, the wood player here, is happy by taking the next one for free, like so, they're going to get that tile for free. And then it means that you're forcing your opponent, who's at the front here, to take the next tile because they have no money to spend. And sometimes this can just work out in your favour because, you know, you can be forced to take, or you can optionally choose to take the next tile like so, which is a nice healthy one, and again, force your opponent to take the next one. So sometimes you can really utilise just camping on a spot, not only to help yourself, but actually to hinder your opponent. And something I didn't mention is that if somebody lands on this spot here, you can actually force them to lose 3 points, but they do actually gain 3 coins for doing so. So there is a kind of an out of doing that, but you are going to force them to lose points if you really exploit that enough. But yeah, very simple system. It stops people stockpiling money, and it's just genius, really. I do really enjoy the management of the windmills because you only ever have 4 to play with, and they're going to be stuck on the board until you completely surround one of your windmills. But of course, you are going to want to get as many points as you can and not want to take those lower tiles. That's going to be, of course, subject to the money that you have. But you want to make sure that you have at least the 3 different types to get those easy bonus 5 points. And I like this kind of networking thing, where as you start to spawn out, there'll be little opportunities that you could sneak in and leech off the other players. Like, for example, if I really wanted to, I could build another windmill here, which has automatically inbuilt, you know, 9 points there, essentially. So there's this kind of cool little network thing that spawns out, and it actually reminds me of a game called Citrus, where managing your kind of flow of your pieces is a big part of the game. Because if you have them all locked on the board, when it comes to placing a windmill, you're going to be playing pretty inefficiently and not getting any points for it. But you want to make sure you have some presence on the board to get points in the first place. Another thing I really appreciate about this game is this idea of quick grabs versus those big point scorings. So you can probably tell here that, again, in the future rounds, it would be quite easy for me to start leeching off other players' hard work. Like, for example, if I wanted to, as the orange player, build a new mill and just shove it right in here like this, I've completely leeched off these 2 pieces. And I'm going to do well for doing that, and I actually only need to place 1 more tile to completely surround it. So it has this kind of mix of just sneaking in, getting quick points grabs, you know, getting those quick points, and then having your windmill back in your supply ready to deploy again. But that is really kind of counterpointed by the fact that you are incentivized to take big turns as well. Like, for example, if you really wanted to start a windmill and surround it with all the high points tiles, you know, those 6s, those 7s, those 5s, and get those huge point swings. While that's going to be slower, it's going to take more effort. The idea that these high point markers are a mechanism in the game is just genius. And it's little design points like this that make the great designers stand out from the good designers, because without these, I think it would be much more incentivized just to keep on getting those small little point grabs and be, you know, you're quick in and out. But with this one, because there are so many points at the end of the game, if you do keep getting those big swings, you know, those 25 to 30 point grabs, then it's going to really incentivize you to do that. So there really is 2 different ways you can play the game, or a mix of the 2, and both are completely justified. I also want to talk about the governors. I think this is such a cool little touch, which adds a whole new pressure into the game, and it does sometimes actually stop you doing that quick grab because you want to be cashing things out at the right time. So you might actually want to very carefully manage this money track to make sure that when it comes to cashing out one of your pieces with the governor on it, you're doing it when it's nice and low. And sometimes this can work against you because it will just never work out. You can never find the perfect tile in order to cash that governor out to get those bonus points or not suffer those negative points. it just adds a whole new dimension to the game, because it means you have to get the timing just right, which is normally not the case with every other aspect of the game. So, and I should say that these two things, as in the high point scorings and the governors, are optional modules, but I think it's those little elements that add wrinkles to the game which make it stand, above a lot of other tile placement games. So I would actually always play with those two modules, because they're not complex, but they do add more meat to the bones here. There is a nice amount of player interaction here. Not too much, not too little. I've already talked about the management of the money. That plays a big factor in drafting and affecting other players. But also there is some potential for some pretty mean plays should you want to do that. For example, if you had windmills kind of close to each other and you know that your opponent is struggling to get the 3 different types, sometimes you can play a tile that's good for you but you know is going to be a nightmare for your opponents. It's going to stop them from getting the 3 different types and therefore those 5 bonus points. Or you can actually place that final tile, which means that they're going to have all the same type, meaning that they're going to get no points at all for all the effort they spent on building around that windmill. So yeah, it just strikes the chord just right for me in terms of meaningful player interaction, not too much, not too little, not too mean, but not too passive either. The game also scales very well, which is nice to say. I have played this at all the player counts and they all work perfectly fine. I think my favourite player count is probably 3, but it does actually work surprisingly well at 2 players, which I wasn't expecting to be honest. Because you are still just, not only doing your own thing, but these little wrinkles of, the pressure of the time, the high scoring markers, it just adds enough flavour to the game to not make it feel as abstract as it probably looks at first. I'm very happy with the production of this game. It's nothing special, but it just feels like a traditional board game. It's nice and colourful and it looks great when it's on the table. And the tiles themselves are, they're fine. They're not the best quality, but this is 12 years old and they still look new. So they've obviously held up quite well. All the wooden pieces look fantastic, like particularly these windmills. They have a good presence to them. Nice hefty little pieces there. So yeah, generally happy with the production and nothing I have issue with. Okay, so it's time for my final thoughts on Seeland. So if you can't tell by my enthusiasm about this, on this video, then yeah, I think this game is fantastic. It feels like a classic, and to be honest, it's games like this which really signify why I do what I do. Some games just fade into obscurity, nobody plays them anymore, and it's just criminal to think that's the case, because this game is so well designed. It has a very simple foundation here, simple puzzly style tile placement, very abstract in its nature, but it's these layers on top that just add it and bring it to life, add spark and add a bit of spice to the gameplay. The money mechanism is brilliant, absolutely love it, adds so much cool interaction, adds a lot of tension. You can really mess with other players and exploit the system and use it to your benefit. Additionally, the pressure of managing your windmills is great. I want presence on the board, but I also want some in my supply because sometimes I'll be forced to place windmills and I don't want to waste those turns. The mystery of flipping over these blue tiles. Are they going to be those high point values? Are they going to give me another turn? Are they going to have the governors on them, which are probably going to have a great tile, but it's going to put me under a lot of pressure and mean that I need to cash it out at just the right time based on the coin system here and the numbers exposed. So all these little wrinkles and elements just take it above and beyond what it might appear as at face value. And I didn't even talk about these high scoring markers. This is a mechanism that I never see it, and it's just so cool to see it implemented to such a high standard. And as I mentioned earlier, it's games like this which really show why the great designers are great. People like Kramer, you can just see it has his DNA all over it. Apologies to the other designer because I don't know much about his work. But yeah, it's those little wrinkles, those little nuances which think, yeah, this is why they're doing what they're doing. This is just understanding the thought process and those little balance things, or little things to balance those two strategies of quick grabs or those big point swings. It's just genius to me. So yeah, I really recommend this game if you can find a copy. I believe it is out of print. It's going to be quite hard to come by, but in the same vein, it's not really in favour. It's not the hotness, and I suppose nobody's going to be headhunting this game, so you might snag yourself a copy for a good price. But yeah, if you want a simple tile placement game that plays in about 45 minutes to an hour, one that scales well, it's a lot of fun, you're going to see some new things you haven't seen before, then I could not recommend Seeland enough, and it's going to get a very solid ranking from me. So that is Seeland, definitely a hidden gem, and as I said, this is really why I do what I do, and I love making videos like this and putting some spotlight on these hidden gems.